I'll introduce myself. My name is Anya Puchalowska. I am EMBA 2020. I am the Vice President of Marketing for Anderson Women, a serial entrepreneur, or as I like to say, I am the beginning of a serial entrepreneur. And I met Martha through a current student who did our astrology, for those of you that did our astrology workshop, through our astrology speaker. And I was an entrepreneur in despair. I was freaking out about taxes. I was incorporated in Delaware, and I live in Los Angeles City, and California's got their own taxes. LA City has its own taxes, and I was freaking out. It was the first time I had to do 1099s, and I didn't know where to file. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know the deadline was January 29th for 1099 slips for people. So just be frank, they don't teach you this in grad school. I've made many errors. Last year, I made an error with a wire transfer. I did not know my first client was wiring $15,000, and I gave her my wire transfer number versus my ACH number. That money got in a limbo. So I've made many, many errors along the way, things that I haven't really learned in my BCO Anderson journey. So Martha is kind enough to step in, help me, brought me some peace in mind. Julia is her right-hand person. That both are amazing. And they'll I'll let you guys ladies introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Annie. We're so excited to be here. Julia and I have been working together for years, and this is exactly the type of group that gets us really excited, because we found over the years that they're just little things that they may not share with you in business school, but once you get out there on your own, it's like, okay, now it's real. How is it really done? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Julia, what I'd like you to do is just introduce yourself really quick as well. If you guys can't see my screen, let me know. Or just like shake. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'm Julia. I've been working with Martha, also bookkeeper, and kind of been doing a lot of things in hospitality and events and whatnot. So it's kind of like my basic little background.
Julia, she put together all these wonderful slides. So I want to thank Julia in advance for that. And also I see one of my dear, dear friends, Kathleen, that's in the meeting as well. So just kind of a shout out to Kathleen. So Anya, again, thanks for inviting us. We're going to jump right in. So this is all about the empowered woman entrepreneur, how to get clarity and control of your finances and your business. And Julie and I have an actual framework of how we teach this. So this is what we're going to share with you guys tonight. And we'll definitely have a chance for question and answers afterwards. Just go ahead and load up the chat. Julie's going to monitor that for me, and we'll make sure that we can get through as much of that as possible. So what are we going to cover tonight? We're going to cover three things. The first thing is the 3 C's of the empowered woman entrepreneur. So we have an academy called the 3C Business Academy, and this is the foundation of what we teach in the academy. We'll share more about that a little bit later. The 3 C's are how to have more clarity, confidence, and control in your business. Then what I like to do is share some of the common pitfalls, like Anya so graciously mentioned. There's so many common pitfalls that I see all businesses fall into, because you really don't learn this unless you've gone through it. And a lot of people have come maybe from corporate America to starting a business on their own for the first time, and they don't have an accounting department or a legal department or whatever to handle all these things for you. So you really have to kind of know what to do and when to do it. So I'll share those common pitfalls. And then I will share some of the best practices from successful entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the last 30 plus years. There's sort of a through line. They all kind of do the same thing. So I just want to share 3 of those things with you. So women entrepreneurs face many challenges and demands. So what I kind of want you guys to think about and put in the chat, what keeps you up at night? What really concerns you? What do you lay awake at night trying to wonder, oh my gosh, did I do that? Did so-and-so do that? Is this due or not? These are the types of things we want to eliminate. We want to show you a system so you don't have that low-hanging fruit. So you can free up your mind, you can free up your time to focus on the reason that you're in business in the first place. Ultimately, we want you to have more clarity, time, prosperity, and less stress in your personal life. So how do we get there? That's what we're going to show you, a simple framework that we've created to help people have just that. So before I jump into that, I actually want to share a little bit about my background. So it says here I'm a Detroit native, University of Michigan grad, and that is true. But actually, my story starts even before that in Ann Arbor. I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My parents were both scientists at the University of Michigan. I was literally born in the University of Michigan hospital. So sounds great. Silver spoon in my mouth, the whole 9 yards, have African American parents that actually own property right on campus. Everything was good until my parents divorced when I was 6 years old. So if you can imagine going from sort of like this elite class to at 6 years old, they divorced. My mother, although brilliant, she had a degree in microbiology, absolutely brilliant, had no financial literacy whatsoever. They did not teach any of this to her in school. Fast forward, now we're living in Detroit. I'm 11 years old. So within 5 years, we went from this idyllic situation. We were homeless, living in vacant buildings in Detroit in the 70s. So my sister, my mother, and I were literally exposed in this dangerous situation because she lost everything in the divorce. That's the bottom line. She walked away with absolutely nothing. Between my father and his attorney, she lost it all. She had no literacy whatsoever. So one day, she always held a job. She was never on social services because honestly, we didn't even know how to do that. But she held a job. She's working at Wayne State University. And one day she gets a letter that the small amount of money she was making as a research scientist was being garnished. Her check was being garnished for back taxes. At this point, I'm 12. And I'm thinking, even as a 12-year-old, I knew this didn't make sense. It's like, we don't even have enough money to survive. How in the world do you owe back taxes? So I convinced her to let me to go to the IRS office with her downtown Detroit. She was terrified. There was so much fear and shame around this entire situation just because she had no clarity and no literacy. But I'm like, look, we got to get this solved. Long story short, we literally filed all of her back tax returns right there, very simple returns. She ended up getting low income credits back. And we were able to use that money to get out of homelessness and get an apartment. And when a young girl has a shower for the first time in a real shower, that's life changing. So that made an indelible mark on me. I knew at that point, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I had to help women, especially, get out of the state of fear and confusion and doubt and financial illiteracy. I was going to dedicate my life to that. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know what the profession was. Everybody in my family is a scientist, they're doctors and everything. We have no financial people in my family at all scientists. So I spoke to my junior high counselor and I was like, this is what I want to do. And that's the first time I heard the concept of being a CPA. So then I was on a mission. Graduated high school, went back to the scene of the crime, University of Michigan, got my degree because that was my dream school. I was born there. That was my dream school. Finished in 3 years because as Anya said, I also knew I was a serial entrepreneur. There was something I loved about creating and starting businesses. Went straight through school, started working at one of the biggest firms, CPA firms in the world, one of the big four firms, which is Ernst & Young in Los Angeles, because my mother and my sister had relocated there at that point. Got a wonderful degree, wonderful experience at Ernst & Young. I learned how to audit. So I went into the audit department, and what I love about it, those skills still carry over today. In audit, I learned fraud detection, I learned systems, I learned how to look at things from the 30,000-foot level as well as in the weeds. So it was a great combination. Then I went on to work for Lockheed Martin Corporation as an internal audit manager, the youngest Black woman in the history of that department to hold that position. I loved it. I was there for a number of years, worked all over the world, again, looking at systems, looking at fraud, understanding how things work from the top down. But honestly, about 20 years ago, I got that itch again. I was rising through the corporate ladder, but I found that the higher I went up, the more I got removed from what really drove me to get into this profession in the first place. And that is to have that real personal connection with women, with people, and showing them how to have more clarity, how to have more peace, and how to have more joy in their life by having more financial literacy. So I left corporate America in 2000. It's been 22 years now. I've been completely on my own. And here's the funny part. After all of that, the degree, the CPA, all of those wonderful jobs I had, once I hung out my shingle as an entrepreneur, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new game. Nothing I had done at that point really prepared me for being a true entrepreneur. As Anya alluded to, there were so many things that were coming at me that I always had a department to rely on. I had some other division that did all of that. Now it was all on me. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This was 20 something years ago. It's easier than ever to do it now by leveraging technology. We're going to show the group some of those things. So over those 20 years, the past 20 years, I've developed an expertise in how to get people from a state of maybe scattered or a little bit confused or just not being organized and having clarity, how to use technology to wrap that all together so you have crystal clear clarity and you can use your brain cells for what it is that you're in business for in the first place, as opposed to just digging through information, trying to figure out where you are. So that's our passion. Around that passion, what I've done is I've packaged these tools with Julia's help, the courses, downloads, coaching, and all of that into a 3C Business Academy to help people get more freedom. And we'll show you a little bit of that later, but right now I want to jump into some of the tools. So here's the ultimate goal. The vision I want to paint is that you can and should be your own CEO. Not only the CEO of your business, but even the CEO of your life. And what I mean by that is, how can you leverage the technology? How can you leverage systems to actually have control over your business, over your finances? It's easier now than ever. Like I said before, this is the golden age of entrepreneurship, which is why I'm so excited that I have the opportunity to share what I've learned over the years. Being your own CEO also means having the right team, doing what you need when you need them to do it. And I don't mean an entire team that you keep on retainer for thousands of dollars a month, but any people that help you do what you need to do, like your tax advisor or an attorney or anything like that, is part of your team, even if you just use them every now and then. As a CEO, you need to set the strategy, you need to set the vision for that team. And then ultimately having the tools so that you know 365, 24/7, whenever you want, exactly where you stand in your business, what's coming up, what's due, and what you need to do to course correct if that's the case. So I'm sharing with you tonight, and I continue to teach with my private clients and in the community that's open. I teach what I've actually learned in the School of Hard Knocks, basically. All the business school experience and my CPA experience and the School of Hard Knocks, I've rolled into one. So what I'm sharing tonight, as Anya asked me to do, is we're sharing the real nitty-gritty things that you need to watch out for. So what's the result? The result, which I hope for everyone that I work with, is to have more time, more freedom, more peace of mind, and that is actually true prosperity. It does not matter about how much money you have in the bank if you're laying awake at night and your peace of mind is ruined because you don't have clarity over what's going on and it makes you fearful or nervous. So kind of thinking in mind, being your own CEO, one question that you can ask yourself is, are you running your business or is your business running you? And Anya, I really appreciate her openness to share what she's been experiencing as an entrepreneur, as a serial entrepreneur. You can easily find yourself in the position where it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like my business is running me. I feel like I'm constantly fending off things that are coming at me. I want to run my business. So when you switch it, let's just kind of take a look at this slide. This is where I see most people I start to work with. This is the as is state. They have a team down here and they're constantly saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. You're late on this. This is due next week. You got to make this payment. You got to file this return. I need this information. And it's just overload. It's like your team telling you what to do is information overload. And every day it's almost like you're scared to open your email. I've seen this situation. It's like, okay, what's next? I didn't know this was coming. And it's constant drinking from the water hose type of thing. And this is what we want to flip. You, as the CEO of your own life, you set the priorities, you set the strategy, you have tools to make sure that your team is working for you and they do what you want them to do when they're supposed to do it. And guess what? These people down here, your team, they like that. Because if you don't give them a plan, you become a part of their plan and they're going to work to do what they think is best for you. But then everybody's kind of working in a silo. You need to be the CEO, get on top of that and lay a strategy out for your entire team so they can be more effective for you. So the 3C process: clarity, confidence, and control. And Julia gave me a great hook for this because I want to kind of paint a visual picture. I don't know if any of you have seen the Netflix show, The Home Edit. It's a really fun show where they literally go in, they sort through everything, they help you categorize it, organize it. At the end of the day, long story short, you have a beautiful pantry, closet, garage, whatever it is they're organizing for you. We basically do this as well. The business edit, the finance edit, whatever you want to call it, this is the process. We start with clarity. We have to have a container where you see all the data, deliverables, and all the deadlines in one place so you have good clarity, along with hard documents that are scanned in to back that up. We'll talk more about that. Once you have clarity, then you have the confidence to implement, innovate, and iterate. Again, I'm all about leveraging systems and leveraging processes so you don't have to leverage your time and your brain power. And then ultimately that leads to the control. The control is being able to engage your team in the right way, engage your service providers, the people that work for you, in the right way so that you have control over the enterprise. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, but you don't feel like you're out of control. You don't feel like, it's the tail wagging the dog. You want to be on the top level and have control. So how would your life be different if you did have more clarity, confidence, and control? I know I have been through this process dozens of times with people. It's absolutely life-changing. It's transformational. Everybody says the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I can sleep at night. I feel so much better. So this is the goal that I have for all of you, and I'll show you some examples of how we get there. I have a case study I want to share, and this is a rather extreme case study, so you can ramp it up if your business is more complicated or tone it down. Either way, it's one size fits all because I use the exact same tools and they are scalable. So one client I have is a long-term client, a couple, they're real estate investors, very successful real estate investors, but they have 41 financial accounts. Bank accounts, credit cards, mortgages, lines of credits, auto loans, the whole nine. 41 different financial accounts that have to be balanced to the penny every single month. Actually, it's done on a weekly basis because I don't like things to get that out of control. But we have a system set up where using AI, using systems, it's easy to do that and keep these all up to date. They are part of 14 limited partnerships. They own 7 rental properties. They have 4 entities, and they have 1 trust. That kind of is an overall entity that covers all of this. So you look at this and it's like, that to me looks like a small accounting department right there. And 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it would have been a small accounting department. Now their bookkeeper does 90% of the work and I kind of oversee things for them. And then they have their tax CPA, attorneys and lawyers and everybody that we get together on a quarterly basis and discuss the strategy. So what do I do? How do I do this with this particular client? Again, clarity is the foundation of everything. So we're going to start with clarity. Data is the first step. So data is a one-stop dashboard, one-stop place where you can see everything all at one time and it's always updated. Deadlines is a integrated calendar where you can see everything that's coming up. So there's no surprises. Like Anya said earlier, I can't tell you, I mean, she's not alone and I really love how she shares things so openly because by sharing what you're going through, other people can learn as well. The whole 1099 deadline, Anya, virtually all new entrepreneurs miss that deadline. Absolutely. It's like January 31st. What are you talking about? Why is this due? And if you file them late, there are penalties. So there's things that you just wouldn't know unless you've been through this before. And then we have the deliverables that are integrated with the calendar. So the first thing you want to do is clarity. That's the foundation. Then you get into confidence and control. But I'm going to back up to this and I'm actually going to show you how some of these tools work. They're not all the tools that we use, but they are the core tools that are absolutely life-changing if you use them and it creates so much clarity. So let's take a look. So the first thing I want to share is the business information worksheet. Now, Anya and I are actually working through some things together and I'm going to help her complete this worksheet for her business because if you look here, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is basic information, but you know what? What about the date your entity was formed? What about the different tax ID numbers that you have for the different states you may be incorporated in? Maybe you have California, maybe you also have Delaware. How are you registered? I mean, what kind of tax entity do you have? Your partnership or your corporation? Are you LLC as one of those? Because that's a tax status that you can have as well. What is your tax ID number? All of these details is where you can make or break decisions in your business. And I'm going to share a couple of examples. During the pandemic, I actually had a few clients who needed some of the pandemic relief funds, whether they be grants for the city of Los Angeles, the PPP funds, and even the COVID EIDL loans. Over a short period of time, I applied, because my clients didn't know how to navigate this process. I applied for over $2.5 million of grants, loans, and assistance. Every single dime was rewarded, every single dime. And some of these businesses, in fact, two of them are sole women-owned businesses, and it literally saved their business. One had been in business for 30 years, was on the verge of going out of business because everything shut down, and she got enough money to stay in business, and she is back on track now. So I was wondering, I always kind of listen to NPR, I'm in Reddit forums, I'm in all kind of places just trying to help people navigate the process, because the PPP process, to be honest, was quite a mess, and even accountants were throwing their hands up. But anyway, we got through it. And I realized by hearing all the stories on the news, how many women and minority-owned businesses were completely shut out of this process. And I was thinking to myself, well, they're pretty much algorithms. So I'm not really sure why they were shut out, but let me keep digging. And then I started going on the SBA's website and doing research on why applications were being rejected and what was going on. So many of them did not know the difference between their state number and their federal tax ID number. Something just that basic, the algorithm had a mismatch, kicked them out of the program. They went to the bottom of the stack, and a lot of these businesses did not have access to these funds at all. Some of them didn't even know that. Let's say you started a business 20 years ago and you got the IRS letter in the mail saying this is your tax ID number. Where's that letter? Okay, so they didn't even know where to start. They were putting social security numbers instead of their tax ID numbers. All kind of things can be completely avoided if you have something set up like this. I like to say, you heard the saying, the devil is in the details, and that's absolutely right. But I actually like to share a saying that my husband uses, which be brilliant on the basics. Let's reframe that. I don't want the devil in any part of this. We want to be brilliant on the basics. And these are basics that you have to have at all times. And this is just the beginning. So now we get down into your banking information. And as Anya said, the ACH number must be 9 digits for a domestic bank, but it's different for wires and ACH. They're two different numbers. I just used Bank of America as an example, but they're two different numbers for wires and ACHs. And you can have your funds end up in limbo, and nobody wants that. So again, brilliant on the basics. The SWIFT code is actually for international wires. If you're not receiving or sending international wires, you don't really need this code, but it's good to have just in case. We're in a global economy. At any point, somebody could need to send you an international wire, and they're going to ask you for your data, and you're going to be like, I have never even heard of that. Let's get this information filled out. Another thing is, Anya's like raising her hand. Here's all the tax information. Again, this is completely editable, so you can, change this however you want. But you have so many taxes when you're an entrepreneur and you're in business for the first time. So we have IRS taxes, which is the federal level. Then you might have states, say you're in California, but then you have Delaware as well. Because you can register as a Delaware corporation for certain people, that's absolutely a good choice. But if you're generating income in California to do business legally, you also have to have a certificate to do business in California, which means you're on their radar and you have to pay their taxes if you generate income here. So we want to keep track of all of those numbers as well, and what's due and when. And then down below, maybe you have to have a sales tax. Maybe you need a seller's permit. That's where this information would go. Here's a big one, Secretary of State renewal. So if you're in, even Delaware has this as well, but California I'm going to use because we're in the state, and they're probably the most extreme state in the union when it comes to actually penalties and things like that. So in the state of California, you have to register what's called a statement of information, either every year or every 2 years, depending on the entity that you have, with the Secretary of State. You can file it online. The process literally takes less than 5 minutes. It's $20, like I said, every year or every 2 years, and it is public information. So if you have a formal entity, an LLC, a corporation, whether C or an S corporation, a partnership, any formally registered entity in California, your statement of information is public. I can go to the website right now, and in less than a minute, I could pull up any California entity, and it will show me who the officers are and what their address is. So again, as women entrepreneurs, I just want to put this out there. When you go and you register your business, I highly recommend, if you don't have a formal office somewhere, do not use your home address. Pay a little bit extra money and get a street address like the UPS store or something like that. Use that as your business address. I've had the same UPS store address since I've been in California. Nobody knows where I live. Okay, I have a formal corporation in the state of California. You pull it up, you're not going to see my home address. It's just that easy to find somebody. And we don't want any stalkers, right? We just want to keep our information private. We don't want identity theft or anything like that. So back to the point of the statement of information for the California Secretary of State, $20. If you miss the filing deadline, you get a certain window to file it. There's a penalty of $250. If you miss another window, they forfeit your entity in California, and you can no longer do business legally in California. And guess what that means? Any contract that you engage in or you enter into while you're forfeited is not binding. It can be voided. So now something as simple as knowing that you had to do that and not doing it could, within a year or a year and a half, because they don't send you notices every now and then, you'll get a little thing. Basically, you get a love note saying you have been forfeited, not that you're going to be forfeited. And this happened to somebody I know not too long ago. They got this letter. I'm like, you got to file the SOS thing. It takes 5 minutes online. So we want to avoid that. That's one of those things that we definitely want to stay on top of. Simple thing, be brilliant on the basics so you don't have more drama later. Now, LA city tax. Thank you, Gigi. I see that. This is something that Anya and I worked on just a few weeks ago. So with the LA city tax, if you are doing business in the city of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is funny, it's not just LA proper. The city of Los Angeles for business tax goes all the way out to the Santa Clarita Valley, but yet you can be in the city of Santa Monica and not be part of the city of Los Angeles. So you can go on their website and kind of do more information. There's actually a link here. But it's really funny because you can be right across the street in Culver City and be in LA, but on the other side, on the south side of Washington Boulevard, you're in Culver City, just as an example. So you got to be really careful if your address is in Los Angeles or not. If you are, here's another one that people I've seen spend thousands of dollars because they didn't know about this. Number one, they didn't know they needed a business license. Number two, they didn't know that it had to be filed by February 28th each year. And number three, they didn't know if they filed it on time and their business made under a certain amount of money, it's completely free, another 5-minute process. So I'll just walk you through a real life example. You see the filing date is February 28th here. If your business, let's say you're just starting out, and you make less than $100,000 a year, it's free, file it on time, no problem. If you are a creative artist or have a production company or you're in the arts, you get up to a $300,000 exemption because the city wants to encourage its artists to stay here in Los Angeles. If you file it even on March 1st, one day late, you have to pay the tax. And depending on what type of business you're in, it could be as much as 0.5% on your gross receipts. So this is one of those taxes, they don't care about your net income like most income taxes. This is a gross receipts tax. So let's say you make exactly $101,000 or something like that, or let's just say even $99,999. You're under the $100,000. Or 99,000, yeah. You're under the 100,000, but you file it late just one day. You have to pay 0.5%. So that's $500 that is out of your pocket that you shouldn't have had to pay at all just because you didn't know this was a requirement. So that's one of the things that Anya and I just worked on just recently as well. There's all these things as an entrepreneur. Once you jump into that game, you literally need to have a checklist of everybody who's going to have their hand in your pocket. And that's cool. As long as you know and you can plan for that and you can minimize it to the extent that you can. But trust me, California does not play. That they are way more aggressive than the IRS. So you want to make sure you're on the right side of everything in the state of California. So keep going on this list. Service providers, your payroll service, again, back to those PPP loans, a lot of them had to turn in payroll reports from the payroll service provider. And when I was listening to NPR and kind of in those meetings and things, they didn't know who the provider was. They just get their check and they just have their accountant handle everything. We'll talk about that a little bit later. They had no idea. Maybe your payment processor, your website, insurance details. This is another really important issue because every business has to have insurance of some type, depending on the type of business you're in. Where there's errors in emission, where there's property and casualty, maybe business liability insurance, whatever it is that you need, it's nice to have everything right here. Know when the expiration date is, because the last thing you want to do is find yourself in a situation where you're out of compliance, you're not insured, and something goes wrong. So what is a use case for something like this? I know from personal experience, it makes my life a lot easier working with my private clients. The one client I just mentioned with the 4 entities, I literally have a tab for each entity. So this would be business A, B, C, D, or whatever. And my client is constantly in a state of moving millions of dollars around to build their real estate portfolio. I have a saying, I've actually heard a saying that I've used over the years: do not trust your future to your memory. I don't want to have to try to remember this stuff. That's not the best and highest use of my time. We're in 2022. You can have it all. Let technology do the work for you. And this is a really basic but brilliant way to keep track of all that, especially if you have a virtual assistant or a bookkeeper or something that works for you. You don't want to get back and forth, emailing information back and forth. Just give them access, even if it's view-only access to a sheet like this, and have them help you run your business. If you notice, I never put username and passwords on this. A lot of people may be tempted to do that. I never, ever do that. I'll share a few more examples about what you can do instead. I actually use an app called LastPass. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. I'll have Julia go ahead and post the link in the chat. I personally have over 400 passwords. So we are beyond the time where you can remember passwords or write them down on sticky notes all over your desk or whatever, because the world is too complicated for that. So now, again, like I said, let the technology do the work for you. I've recommended this app to virtually all of my clients, and they're like, oh, it's a lifesaver. And a real life example, when I work with a private client, this is no joke. Sometimes I can, they're paying me well on retainer or whatever to help them get more clarity. And sometimes we can spend 10, 15 minutes while I'm staring at the camera trying to be pleasant while they're trying to find their passwords or reset their passwords because they've been locked out. It's not a good use of anyone's time, and it's frustrating for everyone. So LastPass is a go-to tool that I use, but I would never put usernames and passwords in a sheet like this. Okay, let's go to the business calendar deadlines and deliverables. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and then I'll make it smaller again. Again, this is a very basic sheet, but it's also very brilliant. Back to, I'll keep using Anya as a guinea pig because she invited us to do this and we have real life stuff that's going on. But this is the type of worksheet that you can put all your entities in. You can make as many lines as you want, and you can put the entity, whether it's personal or business A, B, C, D, or whatever, right here. What you'll find is that most of you, if you have a calendar year end, which means your year end is December, there are a ton of things you have to do in the month of January. It's absolutely insane. And there's things that you have to do throughout the year. This keeps me sane for the private clients I work with, because most of the time their bookkeeper does all of this, but I still want to pop in and make sure that it's done. If I don't see it flowing through their QuickBooks, and I'll talk about that in a moment, I want to make sure that this is being handled. So what I do is I work with their bookkeepers and I help them set up what are all the requirements and things that are coming up for the year. Because honestly, let's face it, every year is pretty much the same. Your insurance expires on the same day. Your taxes are due on the same day. Your quarterly payments are due on the same day. All these things pretty much happen. So this is a rinse and repeat. You just change the year and you're rocking and rolling and just kind of put in the new amounts that are due. This allows you to track everything that's coming up. You can have sort of a 2 to 3 month look ahead, so you can do some cash flow planning. You can have all the information here. So if somebody leaves, we have a lot of turnover right now. And I've helped so many clients bridge the gap between bookkeeper turnovers. When your bookkeeper leaves and you're trying to train and onboard a new bookkeeper, I just had this for one of my long-term clients just earlier this year. We onboarded a new bookkeeper. I had this all set up already for this client, so she was able just to insert herself into the process, which really made things a lot easier. So I'm going to reduce this a little so we can see a little bit more of what's on here. Actually, that's probably too much. Basic information, but this is really key, like bookkeeper or who's responsible for this. So when we want to see who's responsible, what you'll see sometimes is there's a lot of confusion. If you don't, as the CEO of your own life, if you don't create the clarity will just not happen. There's so many things that are due. As Anya knows, even in some of the back and forth and emails and things that she and I have shared over the last month or so, it's like, well, who does this? Does the bookkeeper do it? Does the business owner do it? Does the tax CPA do it? Does your virtual assistant do it? Everybody's kind of like confused. Everyone wants to help you. It's not like people don't want to help you, but there's very specific things that tax CPAs do versus CPAs like myself that are more of like a business systems type person versus a bookkeeper versus a virtual assistant versus things that you should do on your own. So if you're a one person show, this is still brilliant because who's responsible is you, but you at least need to know what's coming up. If you have help, you can actually plug in who's supposed to do what, and this allows you to track what's being done. Here's the URL for where you need to do it. So if that person leaves you, you don't have to start from scratch and retrain a new person. And then you can also have a place for, like I said, username and password. Maybe you don't need one, but this is where you find it. Maybe it's in LastPass. You never put it in the document. And then you can have a link for here's where the document was filed. So if you have a cloud-based system, which I really recommend to keep track of all your data and all your documents, you can put a link right here. Here's the actual tax return or whatever that was filed. And then out here, any additional comments that you may want to have here that will help anyone who needs to maintain this for you or even for yourself. A year from now, you may not remember that, oh, I don't have to do W-2s and 940s because it's already filed by Intuit Payroll, which is your payroll system. So you just kind of want it on the calendar just to make sure that it gets done. This goes for the entire year. Again, completely customizable. And then at the very end here, you have room for additional information and any questions or anything that you want to track. So just a couple more I want to show you. This is actually a financial one-stop shop for your financials. So I'm going to explain kind of a use case for this. The first tab is just the dashboard, completely customizable. You can show any high-level metrics you want. Again, being the CEO of your own life, you want like a dashboard just to see visually where your business is and how things stand. But the brilliance of this, the beauty of this is that you have all the data right here to back everything up. Now, I want to kind of go through how you would use this. First of all, what you see here is just a Google Sheet. This Google Sheet is integrated with QuickBooks, with this sample client that I'm showing here with QuickBooks, completely integrated and is updated every hour. So let's say that you have your own bookkeeper who does all of your QuickBooks, and you, as the CEO of your business and the CEO of your life, have no interest in going into QuickBooks whatsoever because you're not bookkeeper, you're not accountant. That's not what you want to do. No problem. There's a new system out, actually a new program, an app called LiveFlow. Brand new, only a few months old. I was just introduced to it and I was like, oh my gosh, this has changed my life. Every bookkeeper and accountant that I know that have been introduced to this, like this is a game changer. And the reason why is you as the client, everyone that works for you, your accounting team, your bookkeepers or whatever, they want you to have complete clarity of your numbers at all time because you asking for information. How much was the rental income last month? What's going on with this? You know what? That's kind of a waste of time. I'd rather spend time with my clients on strategy and consulting and kind of helping them with more clarity issues as opposed to just giving them basic information. And they don't want to wait for me as well. So connecting your QuickBooks through this bridge called LiveFlow is a game changer. I can't believe nobody thought of it earlier. I can't believe I didn't do it, but I don't write code. That's okay. I just like to play with the systems. I don't like to create them. This is absolutely a game changer. So let's just say, for an example, you have this one worksheet up in the cloud in Google, and you want to know any details in your financials because something just doesn't look right. And I'll give you some examples later about why you should be doing that if you don't do your own accounting. You can just hover over any of these cells and you can click on it and it'll take you actually to the detail that supports these numbers in QuickBooks without you ever having to log into QuickBooks. So the way that I use this is I have it maintained for some of my private clients so they can see everything up to date. It updates every hour as long as QuickBooks updated. The second QuickBooks is updated, all of these financials are updated. Then they can go through and they can say, hey, Martha, this looks a little bit weird. And they just do a comment directly within Google Sheets. And then I get the comment and then we can go back and forth and resolve the issue even before our next meeting. The other way I use this is that I help orchestrate quarterly meetings with my clients with their team. Their tax advisors, their bankers, their brokerage advisors, all these people with their team. And sometimes I create a more sanitized version of this and I give them view-only access to that. So let's say we set up a meeting in 2 weeks to discuss strategy, tax issues, or whatever. If their team has view-only access to this, everybody's informed, everybody's coming to the table with the same information. We're not emailing Excel sheets back and forth. Oh, do you have the latest version? Oh, wait, I'm looking at one. Wait, these numbers are different. You know, it may not sound like it's a big issue, but honestly, we burn, even still in 2022, there's a lot of time burned in people not looking at the same set of data and making decisions over something that's stale or just not up to date or whatever, for whatever other reason. So that's kind of an internal way you can use this. Even if you do your own accounting, using a system like LiveFlow will allow you to share your books with your team when and if you want to. If you don't do your own accounting and your bookkeeper does it and you're not thrilled about going into QuickBooks on your own, which I understand, I love QuickBooks, but I understand why it might not be a good fit. This gives you what you need and you never have to log in. So now we're going to go to a little bit more of a lower tech solution, and this is the Financial Clarity Center. And this is just really basic, just all your bank accounts listed, your brokerage information, credit cards, mortgages. This is not intended to be a complete financial statement, but I can't tell you how many times people used to, before I instituted this, if they don't have QuickBooks and everything set up and they just want to do it on their own, I've seen instances where it's, you know, in married couples and partnerships and that type of thing, where one person has no idea how much money is in the bank, has no idea how the IRA is performing, has no idea how much credit card debt there is. There's just a lot of confusion. There are a lot of just people in the dark. So what I like about something like this is a very low tech solution. You don't need any software experience. You don't have to learn anything. It's just jump right in. It just gives you kind of like, oh, here's all my money, here's all my accounts. And why is this important? So as I shared before, I have this client with 41 different accounts. When we started working together, there were almost 60 accounts. So 41 may seem like a lot, but for their enterprise, it really is appropriate because it handles everything. Almost 60 was a bit much. So for example, we were in the credit card section with this particular client, and they had like 15 credit cards. There was like, there's no need for this. Like, there's just too much, there's too much commingling. You have to figure out, there's just too much to track. And what was the point? They had great credit lines. They just didn't need that. So we started strategically consolidating and closing credit cards that were not serving them, transferring them over to a credit card that worked best for their business. And it was so much simpler. The less data you have to look at, the better. For banks, exactly, it was the same thing. There were too many bank accounts and they only had about 3 or 4 different banks they were working with. So you might have 10 or 15 accounts at one bank. Then we just stepped back and we're like, first of all, I always put the last 4 digits of all the account numbers, because when you have 10 or 15 accounts at one bank, you need to know which ones you're dealing with and what the purpose is. So we used this even before starting with QuickBooks as a way to consolidate which accounts can be consolidated to kind of get it down to the lowest common denominator of financial accounts that you actually need to track. So again, very basic, but very brilliant, because this can give you clarity. If you don't know where the money is in your business or even in your life, this is a good conversation starter to kind of start to get it in plain sight. And then also, if you do decide to if QuickBooks Online is a good fit for you, it may not be a good fit for your business. It's a good fit for most businesses, an excellent fit that I've seen. If that's the case, this is a great starting point to have everything on one worksheet. And then you can even have a column that says connected to QBO, and then you don't have to maintain this anymore. So in a nutshell, these are just some of the tools that I use. The lowest tech tools that I use, but honestly, they give me the most bang for my buck when I'm working with private clients, and I've shared them and people have absolutely loved them. So now let's go back to our premise here. So we've gone through these steps: data, deadline, and deliverables. Clarity is the foundation, as I said. So how do you have more confidence using all of this? Looking at that, looking at what we just went through, again, part of the toolkit that I use, we're able to streamline processes. We're able to innovate and up-level technology and rinse, repeat, and basically refine. So what you'll find is when you don't spend time looking for data, just looking for information, that frees up your time, your mental space to actually work on your business and not work in your business. As the CEO of your own business, as the top 30,000 foot level, you want to be working on your business, not just in your business. As a startup entrepreneur, you're going to be wearing both hats. That's okay, but you need to have a balance. So by having clarity and not having to spend your time digging for data, you can then step back and say, wait a minute, why am I still doing it this way? This is causing, too much time. You can kind of look at your tech stack. You can look at the technology you're using and say, how can I leverage more of technology that's available without leveraging my time? Julie and I have a perfect example. In fact, in running our 3C Business Academy, we have different databases of information for our students and the people that we serve, depending on how they come to us. Well, even just a simple tool like Zapier, which is just a little tool that takes data from one system and automatically populates it into another system, saves so much time having to re-enter the information, because every time your hands touch something, there's a chance for error. So I'd rather have technology to do as much as possible and then just monitor the technology. And then when you get to this point, you get to start iterating on your processes, because it's always a cycle of constant improvement. As entrepreneurs, you constantly want to keep refining and refining as you get feedback from your customers, as you get feedback from your service providers, whatever it is, just constantly rinse, repeat, and refine. So now we're at the control phase. This is where it really gets fun, because this is where the CEO skills really kick in. So how to have more control: evaluate, execute, elevate. And I'm going to go through a few examples of each of these, but you're able to now, getting through the clarity and the confidence part, you're able to actually really evaluate what your business is, and now you can get into more strategic levels. The execute part is really setting the standard for your team and making sure that they are marching to your tune as opposed to you marching to their tune. And then elevate is just elevating your life. Like, honestly, imagine having so much more peace and calm. This gets really to the spiritual core of who we are. It's like when you don't have clarity, you start making up stories about money. Money is money in, money out. Everything in between is a story that you tell yourself about it. But if you don't have true clarity about it, you start to make up stories that may not serve your highest and best purpose, and it causes a lot of fear and confusion. So going through this entire process, you will have the opportunity to start telling yourself a new story based upon what is, not based upon whatever childhood traumas or whatever else you bring to the table that actually start to affect your money story. So we talk about control, but this is one thing that I really, if you don't remember anything else, I want you to really get this one. I know most of you on the call don't want to do your own bookkeeping. I totally get that. So you're going to hire a bookkeeper to do it for you, because whether virtual or in person or whatever, because you do need that level of clarity. So you need somebody looking over that for you. You have to delegate with control, though. What I'm sharing here are real life examples of what I've actually seen happen with clients. What happens is, you want to set up your QuickBooks, and I actually have an entire group of courses in the 3C Academy that shows you how to do your own QuickBooks if you want to. If you don't, you can send a bookkeeper or your virtual assistant, and they can take the course as well for you. What happens is, though, you may meet a bookkeeper saying, oh, I can set up everything for you. For real life example, with another real estate syndication, not the same investor, but a real estate syndication that had over 300 investors and a bunch of properties that they were syndicating. So when I first met them and started working with them over 6 years ago now, they had a bookkeeper that set up everything. Sounds great, right? They're like, great, we can focus on raising funds and on our properties. Well, this bookkeeper didn't work out, and that could happen for a variety of reasons. Maybe they truly just don't work out. Maybe there's an illness or something like that. At the end of the day, she was not the right fit for their business. That's okay. Part ways. Here's the problem. She set up every single financial account. They did not even have access to the bank statements. They didn't have access to the accounting system. They didn't have access to the mortgage. They had access to nothing. Everything was set up with her username and password. So they had to go through her to get to their data. It was a nightmare. It took us almost 2 weeks to unravel that once they realized that they could no longer do business with her. And it involved having to contact the actual service providers and prove that these guys were truly the owner of their data. And just to make matters a little bit worse, she demanded a 2-month retention payout in order to release the information, and that cost them $10,000. So this is something that can be completely avoided. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you set up your accounts. Even if you have to do a screen share with your bookkeeper so she can show you how to do it, you need to be the master admin of all your accounts. Then you add them as an authorized user at whatever level you feel they need. So at any moment, if you feel like it's not a good fit and you need to remove their access, you keep control. It sounds like a basic thing. I cannot tell you, like just literally this morning, I had another situation with another client, didn't get control over something, and I'm helping him with a special project, a real estate deal. And it took us almost 3 weeks to get a piece of information that I could have downloaded in 30 seconds had he had information control over his data. So this is a big one. Keeping with this same thing, what you want to do if you have somebody doing your bookkeeping or accounting, every now and then, just like that live flow document I showed you with all your financials there, you just want to click on a couple of those items and you want to start to look at source documents. So just because something in your QuickBooks says a check or a bill pay was made to ABC Corporation, you want to log into the actual bank account and just pull up that document, pull up that scan check image or whatever, and make sure that it was made out to ABC Corporation. I could go on and on with the fraud that I've seen, and it's kind of sad. One is a very famous country club here in Los Angeles was a victim of fraud because the bookkeeper was writing checks to one entity in the accounting system, but when you looked at the canceled check that came back, it actually was to her. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is I had a client that I was working with. This was years ago, actually, when I first started working with them. They hired me to kind of do an audit of their books just to make sure everything was legit and to actually implement some new technology for them. 3 partners, they operate in agreement. They're in an LLC, operating agreement. Everybody gets the same pay. Everything's great. They're in business for a number of years. By the time I got there and I started looking at the source documents, I realized that partner number 3, we'll just say, had been paying himself 20% more than partners number 1 and 2. Well, partners number 1 and 2 never looked at the source documents. I mean, you don't have to audit it every time, every 3 to 4 months, maybe a couple times a year. Just make sure that the actual third-party documents support what you're being told in your accounting system. Partner number 3 was the bookkeeper for that business, and he put it in the bookkeeping system differently than what the source document said. So I had to bring it up. And that was basically the beginning of the end of that partnership. They ended up dissolving because there were other things that were going on, but that was just kind of like the last straw. So again, I want you to be the CEO of your own lives, be in control, delegate, 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 but keep control. And then finally, just kind of review regularly, just like the financial statements I showed you. If you see some things that just don't look right, it's like, I know that I got paid for this, but this kind of just doesn't look right. Just bring it up, because here's one thing. It's almost like the broken window syndrome. When you go into a neighborhood or something and you see all kind of broken windows, that actually increases the chance of more crime. in this case as well, when you have a bookkeeper and they know that you're going to ask questions because you're truly interested, they know that you're looking at the data, they know that you're engaged and you're interested, you're not an easy mark. Okay. If there's something shady going on, you're just not an easy mark and they're just going to move on. So it's for your own information, and it's also just to make sure that things are kept clean. So now I'd like to jump into some common issues and pitfalls I've seen. I won't spend a lot of time on this. In fact, we're almost done because I've actually covered a lot of it. But data access, as I said before, always having control of your data, keeping your passwords safe and secure and accessible in some sort of system that works for you. And really, that business calendar and that entity information, that business information is worth its weight in gold. But I would also add on top of that document management. So Adi and I were having a conversation just before we started about paper, like how much paper and where stuff is and where you file it. So what I like to do, what Joy and I do with our clients is we almost do like I said, like the home edit, we do our business edit. The very first thing I do with my private clients is I get all of their critical business data scanned and in the cloud, and a complete numbering system and a filing system where it's crystal clear. So I have a lot of clients, and but I like to spend my time actually strategizing with them, not looking for data or waiting for them to dig through boxes and get me information. A lot of them are in real estate, and when you go to, say, get a business loan, get a real estate loan, do a new project, maybe get VC money or whatever, they want all this stuff. So can you imagine 41 accounts, and we're going through some sort of a financial review to get a big property, and they want to see the last 2 years bank statements for like 10 of those 41 accounts. I'm talking, this is a 15-minute project for me because everything has been scanned and downloaded. For this particular client, I can go back 14 years. But you know what? Data is light. I don't have boxes all over my garage with their stuff or in the office. Data is light. It's just a scanned copy. So if any anomaly comes up, for example, state of California, you file a state of California tax return, the statute is 10 years. So if they challenge something because something comes to light, the statute is 10 years, and you could be having to prove and showing source documents for something that happened 10 years ago. I have an example of something that happened over 20 years ago. The state of California challenged. I don't do the taxes, but I help my client prepare for them because it was a 1031 exchange property that had been exchanged over the years. So you have to go back to the beginning. And this was over 20 years ago. But I had the actual purchase document. I had all the tax receipts and everything. So we were able to have a no change audit, which is what you always want when you're in an audit situation. So document management, I can't stress that enough. It's really critical to start getting your data in a safe cloud system, whether it be Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, however you want to do it, OneDrive, and have it really organized so you can get to it when you need it. Another pitfall I see quite a bit is conflicting strategies. I'll just touch on this for a moment. So again, I said like you have a team, unless you do everything on your own, you have a team. And let's take the real estate client again. Their tax CPA, because of new real estate laws and deductions that came out with this last set of tax changes with all the pandemic stuff, there were some very aggressively legal things that he could do, that the couple could do to reduce their taxes, absolutely above the board. The issue was it came in one of the years where they didn't have any sales or anything, and they needed to bolster their income, not reduce their income, because they're about to buy a $10 million commercial property out of state because they're trying to do business in California, but that's a whole other story. But they were going to do business out of state, so they had to have enough 3 years tax returns that showed a certain level of income to qualify for this purchase that they want to make in a couple years. That's an example of conflicting strategy, because on the one hand, they could have saved about $100,000 last year with the tax return. On the other hand, now they lost an entire year because their tax was going to be below that threshold they needed to apply for the big thing that they wanted later on. So you as the CEO of your own life, you know where you want to go, set the strategy, tell your team, here's where I want to go. Now you guys figure out how to get me there. Otherwise, they're going to figure out what they think is best for you, and they're not going to be informed, and you could have a conflicting strategy. And we won't spend any more time on delegation without control, because that's exactly what I just showed you as well. Almost done. Just a few things that my successful clients do. that I've seen over, honestly, I would say almost 30 years, especially heavily the last 22 years or so. They start with a clear end game, just like I mentioned. They know they want to go. They have extensive asset protection and they choose the right entity. So we'll just spend a couple seconds on each one of these. Like, what is your end game? What is your why? Everybody's is different. Travel, do you want to build a huge enterprise? Do you want to serve? Whatever it is you want to do. You might just want to build your nest egg for generations to come. That's fine as well. But if you're not really clear on what your end game is, and it doesn't have to be forever, just for right now, maybe you just feel like your excitement is, here's where I want to go. I just feel this in my soul. So let me get a team together that shares that vision for me and helps me get there. So my successful clients know what that is. They know what drives them. And the ones that find themselves a little bit off from their true north, ultimately, they have to step away and they get back to, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I signed up for. I have a partnership that I work with, 10-year partnership that is just dissolving because one of the partners wants to go in a different direction because the other partner actually never wanted to go in that direction. But again, if you don't have a plan to become a part of somebody else's plan, was not time lost. Everything that we do is a learning experience and we grow from it. But being really true about your end game will allow you to kind of refine your strategy a little bit more. Asset protection is a big one. Insurance and estate planning is something that I see all of my successful clients do because it's not a matter of will something go wrong, it's just a matter of when it goes wrong. And insurance is kind of always your first line of defense, and having a good entity structure and how it's set up to make sure that you protect your assets is really important. I found that my successful high net worth clients, they don't think in terms of months or years, they think in terms of generations. So wealth preservation and wealth generation for generations to come is how they set up their entities. So whatever they build, they intend to pass on to their next generation and have the wealth continue to build from there. And then finally, this is really a big one that I found, especially for entrepreneurs that are jumping in to the game for the first time, is entity selection. So we like to say business is a game, but do you know what game you're playing? So if you're, a basketball player and you show up on a football field, it's not going to go well because you don't have the right equipment to play football because your game is basketball. So there's so many entities that you can select, and this really is a conversation for your attorney and or your tax advisor. If you start with really clear instructions of, this is why I'm in business, this is what I want to do, here's my end game even for the next 3 to 5 years or so, what is the best entity that I need to select right now? I see a lot of C Corps that should be S Corps. I see some S Corps that should be C Corps, but honestly, it's usually the other way around. And what happens is you're just spending a lot of time and effort and extra reporting requirements on something that may not serve you right now, or it may. The problem is your CPA or your attorney is not going to be able to help you if you don't let them know what you want. So even in our 3C Business Academy, there's actually a course with a download. Here are the questions you need to be having with the conversations. Here's some questions you need to ask your advisors so that they understand what they can do for you. Like, I mentioned that most of my family's in the medical profession. Both of my grandfathers were doctors. I have uncles. I mean, everybody's a medical professional in some way. But can you imagine just going into a doctor's appointment and not even having a conversation? They just start prescribing drugs or start giving you a treatment plan. They don't know anything about you, but they're like, oh, you're a woman, X now, you're this age, you're this race, you're whatever, you're about this height and build. Here's what you need. No, not all sizes fit all. So the same thing with your entity. Your advisors need to know you. You are the core of your business. They need to know what you want, how they can serve you. And trust, when I tell you there's so many loopholes and things in the tax code that can serve you, but you want to make sure that they know who you are as an individual, why are you in this in the first place, then let them do the research to find the best entity that's a good fit for you. So this is one that I find that my successful clients do. It's amazing how they use entities for their benefit, and they're clear on why and how to use these entities. So I've mentioned the Academy, the 3C Academy. I'm just going to show you guys very briefly what it is, and then we'll jump right into questions and answers. But basically, as I said at the top part of this, I've taken, with Julia's help, what I've learned over the last 30 years, and especially the last 22 years, and I narrowed it down to, as what Anya was talking about, these are the real life things that you need to know. This is what's going to happen when you hang your shingle out. This is what you need to know. So we priced it so that it's a low barrier of entry so that people can actually get into there and start using the tools. I'll show you really quickly. This is my website. Joy will post that in the chat, and plus it's going to be, I believe it was in the introduction as well in the email that you guys received. But the whole academy is about how to teach people to be their own CEO, whether it's something that you do for yourself, or if you're a bookkeeper or virtual assistant or whatever needs to know how to do. And the courses alone are worth over $3,500. These are recorded courses, screenshots, step-by-step instructions, basically the same things that I do with my clients over and over and over. We've packaged it to Academy so that people can have access to them on their own time. There's also coaching. This is at $500 a month because I actually do coaching where I answer their questions in a group coaching session. And we have a private community where people can feel comfortable sharing within the community. Don't have anything against Facebook or whatever else, but I wanted to create a community that's private, that we control, to make sure that we keep the noise down and to keep everybody's data safe and secure. So for the first time, I put all of this into Academy, and Julia helped me pull all this together. So basically it's $4,000 worth of the exact tools that you just saw. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You can take a look at all the courses that are offered here. This actually says downloads. The downloads are just a list of all the different downloads that we have, and there's more that are being added all the time that you can actually start to use in your business right away. And actually on our site as well, if you go to downloads, the ones that I just went over, not the live QuickBooks file, because that's actually a live file that I'm using as an example, but the other 3 worksheets are available as well if you just need some tools to kind of get started to get organized. So with the Academy, what we're doing for this group, for anyone that's on this call, again, $99 a month if anybody's interested, or if you know somebody that needs this, not a long-term commitment. I actually have it organized so that it's a 12-week kind of plan. I find that most people need about 12 weeks to kind of ingest all of that, but you might just need the QuickBooks part, and you can jump right in here and just take the QuickBooks courses to get your finances up and running. Come and go as you please, start and stop whenever you want, no long-term commitment. As long as the membership is active, you have access to coaching, the community, and all the courses and all the downloads. So Julie's going to post a couple of codes because we have a code UCLA-AW, just all caps, where you get 25% off for the first month if you want to check out the Academy, or you can even use the same code just to actually get the downloads here, which is right here. So 25% off of that as well, and she'll post that in the chat. And with that, Anya, I think I'm done.
Bravo. Thank you so much. I know that there were some questions in the chat.
Yes, I'm gonna jump in the chat now.
We can also mute people and have people ask you directly. I know Sharon had a question on the beginning of the call about, entities and things like that. So I don't know, I will leave it up to you, Martha, how you want to do this.
Anya, why don't we, if you want to moderate it, if you just want to call on people, or because the people that are here, I would love that.
Sure.
And they can ask the questions directly if they want, but you can call on them.
Yeah, Sharon, do you wanna go ahead and start since you had the first one? Go for it.
Thank you. And also really love the framework that you suggested, and I love all the templates. I'm an Excel nerd, so it makes me happy. So my question is about net operating losses, and it might be 2 separate questions, but I'll start with one, and we'll circle back if there's time. I don't want to take time from other people, but so like, for example, I started off as a sole proprietorship, and when you have losses in the beginning, you can carry forward those losses and deduct it from your taxes later on in future years. But like you were talking about, some years, maybe you don't want to have 0 income for other reasons.
Right.
So is it possible to either not use it in a future year selectively, or to use some of it, but not all of it?
Sharon, that's a great question. And I hate to say it depends, but it does depend on quite a few things. So it depends on the type of entity. It depends on something that's called your basis in the entity, because your basis in the entity kind of affects whether you can do a carry back or a carry forward. So it's a little bit of a bigger conversation. And actually, this is I'm a CPA, but I don't go deep into the tax element because I find that the value that I add and what I love to do is helping people get ready for that. So Anya and I work with an awesome CPA. We've had a lot of good feedback from, and she can share his information with you. But what that would involve is taking a look at your actual tax return, taking a look at how you're organized, taking a look at your historical basis, like if you've taken distributions or if you've taken loans, all those things kind of play into the net operating loss carry back and carry forward. But I love the fact that you're even thinking about it, because again, that's one of those things where having a conversation with your tax professional, ultimately what they do is their job is to legally minimize your taxes. That's a good tax CPA. They want to legally minimize your taxes. But they may not know, like, dude, I'm trying to buy a house next year. I don't want to have like $40,000 of income on my return. I need to kind of be less aggressive so I can qualify for this. So you have to, don't let them just kind of go rogue, even in a good way. So hopefully that helped a little bit.
Annette had a question and she's on mute, so I'll just ask for her. How big should your business be, or how much should you be earning to hire a bookkeeper?
To hire a bookkeeper, good question. Usually the question is before you formally incorporate. So Annette, I will say, let's start with, first of all, you can do it on your own. The tools are to the point where you can do it. If you absolutely have no interest in that whatsoever, I would just kind of think about what is the simplest thing you can do to get the clarity that you need if you don't want to hire a bookkeeper. That's number one. But number two, a good bookkeeper is absolutely worth their weight in gold. And nowadays, with the tools and the tech that's out there, they can be virtually anywhere in the world. You give them just the access that they need, and they can do it for you virtually. So you really can get a bookkeeper far less expensive than you could even 5 or 10 years ago. So how much is clarity worth to you? If you can do it on your own, and I see you have a young baby, so it's probably, and you have a lot of other stuff going on, so it's probably not one of the things you want to do, then you just have to say, is $400 or $500 a month worth it to me to get that spreadsheet that I showed you where everything's updated and you can see full clarity every hour it's refreshed. So I wouldn't put it in terms of how big, as in how much money your business is making, because even as Anya knows, as we've talked about before with startups, it's not about the dollar value, but it's about these little things that you can miss that can blow up your entire strategy. It costs you a lot more money in the long run.
I attest to that. Martha to the rescue. Emily, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple of business. One is real estate investment, and also I running real estate as a realtor. And second one is the angel investor and investor technology company. And third one is coaching business. My question is, from the tax strategy point of view, will you suggest that 3 different type business under one entity, such as Emily Chen Group, or you suggest that 3 all different businesses under separate different in the company?
So let me answer this, not speaking as your tax advisor, because you can double check with him or her, but I would say absolutely separate. So you're a real estate investor. Okay, so let's start with that one. And that's where I have a deep expertise. And then you also invest in tech startups, correct? And then you have a coaching business.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So all 3 of those have different insurance requirements. They have different liability requirements. Even for real estate, there's different tax advantages. If you're organized a certain way, you can take more advantage of the tax advantages. Whereas something like your coaching business, it may be better to be set up as an S corp because there's different retirement and advantages you have if you work for yourself and you loan out yourself to your S Corp, that's a good structure for that. And as an angel investor, I would still keep that separate. You may not even have to have an entity at all for that. It kind of just depends. I'd have to look at the bigger, or have your person look at the bigger kind of overview. But for sure, I would keep real estate investing separate from your coaching, because just what I'll share about an S Corp, which is like when you do your own service, you have your own corporation. A lot of people do this in the entertainment industry. In fact, that's just one of the ones. Actors, directors, or whatever will hire themselves out as providing a service to their S Corp. There's so many retirement benefits. There's so many tax credits that you get when you do that. Whereas it would be a completely wrong structure for real estate. So for sure, I would say 2 separate ones and maybe even 3. But Emily, here's the other thing. I like how you said Emily Chen Group, because I have a client that is literally exactly what you just said. She's a real estate investor. She's a tech advisor. And Julia knows this person because we work with her. And she's a coach. I'm like, it's exactly what you just said. And what we did when we help her set up her QuickBooks, it was, I won't give her initials, but it was XYZ Enterprises. And we consolidated those businesses under one QuickBooks account. So she has that dashboard. She can see everything that's going on in one financial portal, but legally she has 3 separate businesses in addition to personal. So that's another class that she had, was personal. And it's just beautiful. It just worked really well because it gets you what you need, but for your taxes and everything, you've got everything in the right bucket so that you can maximize your tax savings and minimize your liability.
I see. Thank you. That's some more. Sorry, one more question. So if we subscribe your service, that is under education category or more CPA service category?
I would say education. What a great question. So I didn't show you on the site, but there's actually a little tagline that you can, you're talking about the fee for the service, you can actually deduct that under education. That is if you go through the academy and you learn the tools and you do them on your own, that's under education. If you need more hands-on and you want to become like a private client for a while to help everything get up and integrated and everything, I have that scenario as well. That would be under more consulting. You can even be accounting and consulting because, I'm licensed to do that, but I would actually deduct it as consulting.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Emily. Dr. Chidinma, you have a question.
I do. First of all, thanks for putting this together. This is fantastic. So I have my own company and I'm providing a service, basically telemedicine services. And so currently my biller does all the billing and she sends me, checks at the end of the month. And essentially the question is, so I have a 2-month-old here. The question is whether or not I can use some of the reported income to reduce my taxes. Because what's happening is, for example, I bill Medicare, I don't know, $10,000, and then they send me $2,000 back. Is it possible to report that $8,000 as a loss, or is that something that is not even reported in the first place?
Oh, no, that's a great question. So here's how it works. What you would do, depending on, it's virtually the same for every entity. Not 100% sure about medical billing, but again, with my family being in the medicine, I kind of know that this is how it would flow. But for any businesses where you get gross receipts, so that would be your $10,000, you would get gross receipts. The $8,000, do they keep that as a fee, or does that go to like the service provider or something?
No, so you bill Medicare, and Medicare says, we're not going to pay this, we're going to pay whatever we want to pay. So they just pay that. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
Nobody keeps that.
Nobody keeps it. So you end up actually with just $2,000. Is that what you're saying? Right. Okay. So
Correct.
then that's that $2,000. Most people are on a cash basis. That's what you would report on your tax return. So you don't get a 1099 from Medicare saying they paid you $10,000. You'll get a 1099 saying they paid you $2,000.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So that's a really great question. What you want to think about with taxes is there's no tax loss unless money changes hands, unless it's under a tax code like depreciation or something like that. So in this case, you just report the net that you get, which is the $2,000.
Okay, so there's no way of reporting back the amount that's actually supposed to be received, not the negotiated amounts.
No, because here's what'll happen. If you report that as a loss, then the flip side is always true. Well, you should have received $10,000. So now you have to report that income, but you really only got the two. So when it comes to taxes, it's actually pretty straightforward. Think about the money that actually changes hands. There are some instances where you can deduct losses where money doesn't change hands, but that's more like casualty losses and like depreciation and things like that. In a service like that, I don't think that would really count. But I want to say all of this with the tax questions. Whoever your tax advisor is, these are great questions to ask just to be sure there's not some teeny tax loophole that I don't know for your industry. The tax code is like 2 feet tall. It's ridiculous. It keeps getting more and more complicated. So there may be something that will allow you to minimize your taxes that I don't know about because it's industry specific.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience?
This was so helpful and
It
so
says
interesting.
count to 15 seconds or something like that before somebody says something. And that just said it.
Thanks,
Okay,
Inez.
well, ladies, thank you so much for joining. And gentlemen who already left. Martha, Julia, ladies, thank you so much for doing this for us. You know, we're going to do part 2.
Yeah.
Probably different
Thanks
title.
for having us.
Yes, thank you,
Probably
Anna.
like tax party, like what you guys did previously. We'll do a little tax party with a little wine just to ease our nerves. Yes, we'll look forward to it. I forgot to take any photos. I'm usually like a screen photo crazy.
Oh, that's funny.
But I was so into the whole conversation that I totally forgot it. So I don't know. I hope somebody took something. I will reach out to our board and see anybody that was on the call took any photos. Maybe Kathy.
Well, since it's recorded, maybe we can just take a screenshot.
There you go.
See, this is why she's the president of Anderson Women. Okay.
Problem solver.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ladies.
Thank
Have a great night.